Yes, growing up in a segregated area, you know where you're accepted and where you're not.
Mm.
So you made sure that you didn't go into the businesses, the restaurants, the theaters, what may have you, that uh, the white. And we had nice theaters and restaurants which was operated by the blacks.
Mm.
So the town was more or less split. But my parents ran a restaurant and my mom ran a beauty shop and a barber shop. And by them being businesses, uh, therefore, many of the Caucasian peoples in downtown knew them. My mom was very fair complexion,
Mm.
mistaken to be white many a times. So I can remember going into some of the businesses and some of the people there would ask her, "Is this boy with you?" She said, "That's my son."
Oh, okay.
She said, "And I may send him here for business without me. He's very capable of doing many of things for our restaurant." So it got to be where I was very well known in the town. Now, not only that, I had a privilege of going into various parts of the town where many of the other Negro kids was not allowed to go.
Hmm.
And of course, I felt a little different from that because it seems to me that they was mistreated and I wasn't. Now, in our neighborhood where we lived, our neighborhood was, say, maybe 60% Negroes and 40% Italians.
Hmm.
So, and of course, the Italians, most of them ran the little small neighborhood markets and what they have it. So we often mixed in. We played together. We um, did all other things except going to school,
Hmm.
church, what may have you. We would have to depart. But I learned all of those things as growing up, being in a segregated area. Uh, 18, I was drafted. They always say that there was no blacks in the Marines before 1942, but that's not true. There were three blacks in the Continental Marines,
Hmm.
and their names was Orange, George, and Hey You. and they fought in many of the battles during the Continental Marines and the British and the Indians back in those days. In 1948, the end of 1948, that was the breaking up of the segregation in the Marines. And if you remember, that's very close to when the Air Force was established. And that's when they broke up the segregation completely in the military forces. The Army and the Navy did have blacks in the service back in the 30s, but not the Marine Corps. But 1942 Executive Order 8803 was the organizing of the Marines, Black Marines, at Malfa Point in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
And you worked your way up in the ranks as a Marine in
Yes,
communications.
yes, it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I spent 2.5 years in the beginning in the Navy, and then I transferred over to the Marines. And of course, it didn't make no difference whether you had been in the military before. You still was a recruit,
Mm-hmm.
and you was treated the same way as others. The DI would depend on you a little bit because you did have some military experience. so that helped quite a bit. But I
And
was
for your service, you received the Congressional Gold Medal for serving as a Montford Point Marine, correct?
correct. And the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor is something that your unit did doing while you was on active duty and awarded to you by Congress. I found in the service, if you are nice to anyone, I don't care who they are, if you find yourself, if you be nice to them, treat them just like you treat the others, you get the same treatment in return.
You know, I think all three of our guests have really articulated that to me in pretty identical ways. And Louis, I didn't finish up with your story. You came to Anaheim and you told me about your neighborhood experience. And that was your theme. So really quickly before we move forward, I want to ask you, what happened in Anaheim?
Okay, I moved to Anaheim in 1958. Still, segregation was in various places. Anaheim was very segregated, if you didn't know that. And there was many whites that didn't like blacks moving into the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved in, about maybe a month after I was there, and many of the whites found that I was living there, my wife began to get phone calls, and it told her that you are not wanted in this neighborhood, and we would like for you to move. So she told me when I came from base, I was at Camp Pendleton at the time, and she told me, so I went back and explained to my commanding officer I need some time off, and I took 2 or 3 days off, and the phone call came in, and I answered it, and as I say, being nice works. It's got the same thing. Well, when are you going to move? And my question were, I hadn't planned to move. And they said, well, we have a group there, and we have planned to pay you X amount of dollars to move. Well, at that time, the house I bought around $15,000.
Right.
And I said, well, if you want me to move, then can you bear the expense? And they said, oh, yes, she said, we'll pay you what you pay for your house. I said, no, you pay me what I asked you for. And they said, what is it? I said, $250,000. The conversation ended, and I didn't hear from him again.
Good job. I would have loved to be your neighbor. I would have loved to live on your street. We would have had a good time. But I love that story. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for our special guest?
I wanted to just ask you a question about your time in the Marines.
Okay.
You were part of the Montford Point Marines, were the first African-American Marines to be trained in the 1940s. And Louis, you were part of the Montford Point Marines in 1946, I believe.
That's when I went in the Marines.
Right. Did you feel a certain amount of pride being part of that group?
Well, even today, Marines have a little more pride in the military than others. And we always say it's first in and last out. And because we always was the ones that would go into the invasions, and many a times we'd stay there until it's all secured.